Nation of Fit in 10, welcome to day 42. We are officially 4 weeks away from the end, if you can believe that. 4 weeks away. And started off with the fourth check-ins today. And of course, always at this time, the challenge, we see a little bit of a slowdown with people's results. And I want to encourage you to keep up with everything, okay? And be very, very careful with anything you add or you eat or what you think you can get away with, etc., etc. You will not be plateauing at this point in the challenge. And of course, your calories aren't even the same. Now, when you do lose body fat, for sure, your metabolic rate will slow to some degree because you're losing some tissue that requires energy to maintain. So this is only normal, right? The more fat you lose, the less energy you're going to have to maintain, although maintenance of fat tissue does not require a lot of calories. So, but there will be some difference there. So that is obviously accounted for, and this is one reason why I do make a small adjustment to your calories as time goes on. But ultimately, we need to really hone in on the food intake and all the exercise. So I want to remind you again, I know you know this, but I need to emphasize this to you, just like how enthusiastic you were on day one or the first week of the challenge, you need to have that same enthusiasm. We need to reinvoke that same enthusiasm so that you get in and you work just as hard as you were in the beginning on your cardio. Okay, you should be working harder on your cardio now because your heart rates are different. So are your intervals. So make sure you keep up the intensity with your cardio. You get those in. Make sure you get the weight training in as well. That's super, super important. And, of course, your diet, all right? We all know the importance of the diet and those numbers, and I want to emphasize that little things that you think you might be able to get away with, you can't, okay? You can't get away with those. You've got to account for everything, all right? And, every portion of those three things I just mentioned, they have their place, okay? So one can't fit the other. So don't think that you can eat more and then just do more cardio, or have some extra desserts and do more cardio, or replace weight training with cardio, or replace your weight, do more weight training, do less cardio. Just do what I tell you to do, okay? Do your best at maintaining those things. All right. So feedback here. I did read this one. And it's a great question, so I'm going to get into it. And by the way, this person did 3 resistance-based workouts, awesome, and 4 cardiovascular sessions, so this is great. I will read something that they want to improve upon, so I think it's really good for you guys to hear this because, it allows us to relate to one another better. I have been, so again, this is something that this person is going to try to improve upon. I have been feeling good with my progress and started to relax on the planning. All right. I need to focus on planning out my meals again. All right. So, something again, and I'm going to encourage all of you to do this because I know 100% with all of you, there are things you can improve upon. There's at least one thing you can improve upon. So work on that. Okay. Great question here. So let's get into it. You mentioned in your videos on day 31 that you don't want to place more value on weight training over cardio or vice versa, and that weight training is an investment. I assumed that the investment is in building muscle. Is that what you mean? Also, I thought that weight training is more of an anabolic workout and that it uses more energy than cardio training. Example, more inefficient use of energy. Is that true? Okay, so I love this question actually. It's lots of things to talk about here. I'm going to try to cover everything mentioned. So let's talk about some of the exclusive benefits of weight training, all right? So I'm not going to mention benefits of weight training that you can get from other forms of exercise. We're going to talk about just exclusively here, what do you get from weight training that you cannot get from other forms of exercise, all right? And when we say weight training, we're talking about doing movements where we are reaching muscular failure. At least I'm speaking more specifically, where you're reaching muscular failure somewhere between 5 and let's say 30 reps, okay? Meaning you couldn't do another rep somewhere in that range. So number one, and it was already mentioned here in the question, the building of muscle tissue, yes, this is obviously super important, and we'll talk about more reasons. We'll talk about that in a second here, why that's important. But muscle mass is the number one correlated physical attribute along with longevity. So yes, I know correlation is not causation for sure, but it is interesting to note that there is a very, very strong correlation between the amount of muscle mass somebody has and their longevity. And probably more importantly here, quality of life. All right, so we'll talk about that here in a second. But the building of muscle tissue, and this is going to overlap a little bit with fat burning. So I won't talk about all the benefits that muscle mass has on fat burning. But one thing that muscle mass does is it gives you a greater reservoir to store sugar. And this is one reason why it's a great thing to implement for your, if you happen to be, if type 2 diabetes runs in your family. I mean, it's really a lifestyle disease, so anybody can get it. But obviously there's some people who are more prone to it. So if you are prone to it, or maybe you're borderline type 2 diabetic, weight training is going to help you immensely. Okay, so you're creating more reservoir for sugar. You're also teaching your body to require less insulin production to get the sugar into the muscle, which essentially is part of type 2 diabetes, right? It is. Well, there's several things to type 2 diabetes. It can be the overproduction of insulin, or it can be the lack of the muscle cell being as receptive to insulin as well. And there's probably other aspects to it that I'm unaware of. Or it could be both those things. So we're basically improving insulin sensitivity. We don't have to demand the pancreas to do as much work by producing as much insulin, and also the muscle becomes more insulin sensitive. All right, or maybe I'm just repeating the same thing by saying that. The other aspect too is with weight training, and I don't want to give all these away because I'll do a separate video on fat burning, but basically when you weight train specifically, so when you train with weights at a high enough intensity, your body produces, what are they called? I didn't look this up again. Exerkines. Your body produces something called exerkines. I don't think exerkines are exclusive to what I'm talking about, but they're basically these vesicles that your muscle cells release after weight training, and these vesicles basically go and eat away at body fat specifically, which I know sort of on the surface it sounds a bit hokey, but this is something that was recently discovered. And I'm obviously speaking about it in a very simplistic sense. Number 2, wait, 8.5 minutes already? Holy moly. Okay, I'm definitely not going to get through this, but we'll get through a good chunk of it. Building of bone and ligament and tendons, okay? So this is really, really important. Obviously, you know that you're going to build more bone density. This is really, really important because obviously as we age, we lose bone density, and we are much more prone to fractures or breaking a bone as we age. But also we get the strengthening of ligaments and tendons, and this is really important as well. Okay, 9 minutes. I'll go through, hopefully I can get through the rest of it on the next video, but this is super, super important, so I want you to hear me out. So, watch the next video that's coming up on this, and we'll go through some other things, some other exclusive benefits to weight training. All right, message of the day. On this day 42, and it's just a reminder to you that sometimes you just have to get going to get going. And what I mean by that is it's quite often when we dread doing something, it's usually the beginning that we dread. That is, once we start doing it and we get into it, it becomes that much easier, right? So there's a saying, for example, like the hardest aspect to exercising is getting to the gym, or the hardest part of going to the gym is just getting yourself there. But once you're there, or in this case, once, let's say you start your cardio, or once you get into the class and Martina gets you going, it becomes that much easier, right? So it's kind of like this, it's more like the thinking in the beginning that really holds us back. But I'm going to encourage you not to think about it and just do it. And this is one reason why, I keep reminding you guys, if there's something that you have a hard time doing, do it first thing in the morning when you wake up, because that's going to be the easiest time for you. Typically speaking, it will be the easiest time for you because your level of motivation, or maybe let's say your I guess we could just say motivation. Your level of motivation will be the highest, okay? You're going to have the least amount of reluctance, I think is a better way to say it. You're gonna have the least amount of reluctance to do something that you don't want to do first thing in the morning. So that's what I'm gonna encourage you to do. Positive energy, positive vibes, believe in yourself, for the love of God, give some gratitude, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.